Hey guys, have you ever bought a piece of furniture, gotten it home, and then thought, oh no, I don't love it, and you've spent all this money? Well, it happens all the time. It even happens to me. So watch this video where I go over my top 10 mistakes that people make when buying furniture and how to avoid them. Welcome to the Good Room, and today we're going to unpack 10 of the biggest mistakes and how to avoid them when buying furniture. The first one seems pretty obvious, wrong size. Now, granted, I don't think this is going to happen to you, but what does happen to a lot of my clients is they buy something and they get it in the space and it just feels like it occupies too much of the space, like the sofa just feels overscaled or underscaled, like just the coffee table seems too little, etc. And every 10 centimeters can make a difference. So my advice is that you follow these 3 rules. First, get some masking tape and a measuring tape and a notebook. Now you're going to literally map out your furniture on your floor before you go shopping. So kind of make a big rectangle where the sofa goes, how big of a coffee table, rug, etc. Stand back, walk around the space. I have done this so many times with clients, and even when I had done a scaled floor plan, I realized, ooh, this just doesn't feel right. It needs to be just, 5 centimeters shorter or 5 centimeters bigger. It really makes a big difference, and then you know exactly what you're shopping for. The second mistake is with curtains. And these are not an inexpensive thing you do in a house. If you need a lot of them, we're talking about a lot of money. So let's look at some of the mistakes that people make. The first one is too short. Your curtain should always go all the way to the floor. A lot of people like about a centimeter gap. I actually like them to touch the floor. So that's up to you what you like. When they touch the floor, they can gather a bit of dust, but I just think they look so much sexier. The other thing is too low. And by that, where you hang the rod is too low. It should not only be above your window, but it should be above the architrave. The last one is just going too cheap. Now, I know I've picked a really hideous example here. You would never do anything this bad, I'm sure. But these ones that are available everywhere with these, like I call them grommets up here, they're great in that they're inexpensive. You can find them at IKEA and Freedom and places like that, but they're just a dead giveaway that the curtains aren't custom. And I would relegate these to your guest bedrooms, etc. I certainly wouldn't be doing them in your main room. On the other hand, is getting your curtains just right. To start with, going for full height. Look at how elegant these curtains are. They're absolutely magnificent. Now, I know the house doesn't hurt. The architecture here is amazing. But the curtains are going right to the floor, and in this case, they're touching, or you could have a 1 centimeter gap. But they're also going all the way to the ceiling, and the rod is hugging the cornice rather than just being right here at the window line or the architrave. Same things with these ones. Notice how the rod is nice and high, maximizing the feeling of elevation and space in the room. And you can do what I call the American sweep on the floor. I find that Australians are quite horrified by this idea, but some of them really get behind it because it's like a sexy dress or a pair of men's suit pants. They always have that break at the bottom. And if you don't have, cats and dogs and fur balls on your floor, you can get away with this look. If you're on a budget, rather than going with those grommet curtains that you can get for $10, check out Pottery Barn. They've got lots of amazing pre-sized panels and gorgeous linens. They've got sheers and solids and blackouts, etc., and really, really nice curtain hardware in oil rubbed bronze, nickel, glass finials, etc. It is more traditional, but I still absolutely love it. The other place is Etsy. It's great. You've got all these people who are seamstresses doing it from home, and they'll give you a million fabrics to choose from, and then you put in your sizes and voila, they send them to you. Much less typically than some of your local curtain manufacturers, but definitely compare because you may find somebody really great in your neighborhood doing it quite affordably, and they'll have lots and lots of fabrics for you to choose from. The third mistake is no lamps. Now, If you want a well-lit room, more downlights is not the answer. It's just going to end up looking like your local shopping mall. Instead, get some beautiful lamps. They not only add an important decorative feature, like especially on bedside tables, but they throw diffuse light out rather than down. So they make you look much more attractive. They actually fill the room with soft light, much more than any kind of just overhead architectural lighting can. And they just generally make it feel warm and homey. Now, included in this, I would put wall lights, or what I like to call wall sconces, and pendant lights. They're like table lamps that come from the ceiling. And generally you would buy them at the same time as you're buying your furniture, but just get an electrician to pop in and install them. Number 4, buying a cheap sofa. For me, I know sofas are expensive, but it's like jumping over the dollar to save a penny. They are the biggest thing in your room and you interact with them. So when you buy a cheap sofa, for one, it usually looks pretty boring. Sorry about the sofa in question if you've got one similar, but it's just got no personality. It's not offensive. It just doesn't add anything. The foam absolutely will break down over time, and the fabric tends to stain, or even worse, wear on the corners. So after 3 to 5 years, this big piece of furniture is just going to end up in a landfill, which is a bit sad. So invest in that piece that you interact with and that you spend hours binging out on Netflix, because it's not only the biggest thing you're going to look at, it's the biggest thing you're going to touch in your living room. And look for interesting little details that kind of make it special. I love these fold over cushions. I think they're really fun. They're kind of the modern equivalent of those puffy cloud-like sofas that were so big in the 80s. You know, even just something like a bolster or this blanket stitching, this beautiful timber plinth, all of this, it adds a design element whilst still being really utilitarian and practical. Buying rugs last. Now, this is one that not a lot of people know about, and they're quite surprised because a lot of people think buy all the furniture and then I'll find a rug. Well, in fact, it's actually the first thing I choose. And here's why. For one, once you've bought your furniture, right? So I've purposely picked this image because it's in a kind of a duck egg blue sofa. Trying to find a rug that matches your sofa is really hard unless you're going for something plain, really difficult. But if you had bought this gorgeous rug here on the bottom left, it's really easy to get a sofa made. I mean, there's thousands of fabrics, right? But there isn't thousands of rugs. So it's really easy to find the perfect tone to go with a rug like this. Oftentimes you're going to end up with a rug that's really boring if you wait till the last minute and just a texture. And while I think these are okay in some situations, they're not adding a lot to the room. If you do want a beautiful rug, especially one that might be custom made or custom colored, they tend to take 10 to 14 weeks. So waiting till the end means your living room, bedroom, etc., isn't going to be finished until that rug comes in. I really think rugs are like art for your floor. Now, anybody that's watched any of my videos know that I'm especially keen on these Persian rugs because I think they never date. They're pretty indestructible. You can, let your pets run wild on them. My kids spilled juice on them and you just kind of sop them up, and they're meant to last hundreds of years. But really, would this room feel as beautiful as it is, or this one, if it was just one of those plain textured rugs? Not even close. Or go modern. But the point is, this is an opportunity to make a really beautiful statement that will make your room feel different from anybody else's. The 6th deadly sin, buying everything in one weekend. Now, this is tempting and it's efficient, but it's not a good idea. What you end up with is furniture that's really overmatched because you've bought it from a couple showrooms. It ends up feeling like a bad package deal, like something you've won. The other thing that happens is it will be all defined by whatever was trendy on that weekend, in that month. And again, trends are something to beware of because you tend to get sick of them. And lastly, it'll probably feel a bit uninspired because there's just you get decision fatigue. If you're running around trying to furnish your whole house, I mean, I've said one weekend, but realistically, let's say you're doing it in 1 month, you just end up saying yes to things that aren't what you really love. I much prefer to see people try to create a collection. Even if you do buy all of your furniture in a short period of time, Try to give it that feeling that you've curated it over years with things that don't match perfectly. And I always like to see people have at least 20%. I know it sounds like a lot, but 20% of things that aren't brand new, that are vintage or inherited or maybe DIY fixed up, but that just don't look like they just flew off of a showroom floor. Number 7, impractical fabrics. And I like to say it's not kids and pets that are the problem, it's the fabric. So how many people can really live with a white linen sofa? Not very many, and yet they're so prevalent on Pinterest and in magazines, etc. But there's very few of us that can. I love this. Gorgeous velvet sofa with the cute little kitty. Can you imagine? Literally velvet, everything sticks to velvet. And while I love it, this would look like a cat bed after a month. I mean, it would just be coated in fur. And if you have kids like this, that you let them be a little bit free range and make forts and things like that, your sofas and other upholstered furniture are going to need to be a bit kid-proof. So go for stain-resistant fabrics. Nowadays, there are so many amazing fabrics. I've got a little video on, I think it's on my Facebook page, about picking fabrics where I went to the Warwick's showroom. And whereas before, fabrics that were 100% polyester and stain resistant, they felt plasticky and they looked terrible. Now they look amazing. They can mimic linen, mimic velvet, mimic boucle. They just look so beautiful, but they're not going to stain. If you really want to have a sofa that's easy to look after, go for a textured fabric. The more textured it is, the less it shows when it's dirty. It's one thing for a fabric to be stain resistant, but if it's very, very flat, what happens is that until you clean it, you can see the dirtiness. Whereas when there's lots of different flecks of different threads, like these fabrics I'm showing you here, here's a great example. So you've got black and white, and in this one, you've got a bit of beige, and it's actually bumpy. They are so amazing at hiding sins. I mean, you could literally, spill some coffee on it and wipe it up with a napkin and you'd barely see it. So this is what my sofa's made of. And I've got a dog that sleeps on the sofa, much like this one. And it still looks good after 10 years. Now, the other solution is to just go leather. Of course, that's wipeable. But I always encourage people to do real leather and a semi-aniline or an aniline leather, which means it's breathable. The ones that are super coated in plastic, honestly, they don't feel any different from just a vinyl. So why pay for leather if you're going to coat it in plastic? Number 8, uncomfortable dining chairs. They may be cheap, but they're not super cheerful. I understand that when you have to buy 6, 8, or even 10 dining chairs, that adds up to a lot of money. People always get sticker shock when it comes to dining chairs because they realize how much of their budget that accounts for. So it's tempting to buy cheap ones. And if you have really young kids, I would recommend going for something like this. But this chair, it's not comfortable after 2 hours. These metal ones, I think you could pick these up for probably $75. But if you ever want to sit there for longer than a half an hour, this is not the way to go. I would recommend if you really do need something wipeable, then go for something solid, but still ergonomic. This has a beautiful little scoop. So that's going to be much more comfortable than just a flat chair. My favorite are always upholstered fabric, and my dining chairs are cane with fabric seats so that the back doesn't get dirty, but that the seat is still comfortable. Another option that's easy to look after is these rattan seats or woven seats because they have a little give to them. So when you sit your bum down, they give and they don't make you feel sore and like you want to get out of that chair after 20 minutes. Number 9 is getting sucked in by sales. Now, it's really tempting, I understand, but basically you're just saying yes to something you don't love, which doesn't really make it cheap because if you get sick of it, you're just going to end up reselling it or giving it away or feeling disappointed after you went to all the trouble to maybe renovate and you had this dream about how your living room or your bedroom was going to look, and then you've settled for half-assed. Sorry for my language, but that's basically what it is. So don't spend a little bit of money on something that you're ho-hum on. Wait until you can buy something you love. Take your time and fall in love. Instead, take your time and fall in love with what you're going to buy. Speaking of falling in love, don't fall in love with the latest trend, because what happens is that everybody else is falling in love with the exact same thing. In a couple years, you just get sick of it and you feel like everybody's got it and it isn't special. Not that I'm encouraging you to be buying things to impress other people, but it's important that your space, your home feel like an authentic reflection of you. So just as an example, this is a snapshot from Freedom Furniture 2015. So that's, 4 or 5 years ago now. It so defines that time, doesn't it? Like chevron rug, this chair, which versions of this chair were huge with these legs, trestle dining table or desk, I'm not sure which it is, the little succulent terrariums, and copper, right? It feels very 2015. But back in 2015, I would have liked this. I would have thought this was cute. So just stay away from those things that feel too ubiquitous. If you see them everywhere, best to avoid them. Instead, if you really want to avoid trends, go for classic. With classic, you can quite successfully marry in some modern pieces and it feels so amazing. That's what I call eclectic design. So this is quite a contemporary dining table. This really kind of out there art piece of a dining chair, oversized, piece of artwork here, beautiful curtains. You know how important that is to me. And it just feels gorgeous. Like this would never date. 10 years from now, this will still look cool. The other thing is to just go totally unique. Now, you might hate this bathroom, right? And I'm sure a lot of you do. I actually love it because I just think it's so quirky. But 20 years from now, this wouldn't date. You wouldn't know if this was done a year ago or 10 years ago. It's so unusual and so specific to the person who loved it. And it's joyful that you don't need to worry about it going out of date. Speaking of trends, which trends are on their way out? I've got another free video. Check it out here at thegoodroom.net. And I look at which ones are on their way out that you probably are loving right now and which trends I think are here to stay. And of course, we love to socialize and the opportunity to get to know you. And we are at all the usual haunts. On Instagram, we are at _goodroom. Don't forget the underscore. On Facebook, we are at The Good Room Design. And within Facebook, we have a really cool private Facebook group, which we encourage you to join because it's there that we actually chat. People post pictures, people post tips. I do sort of extensive how-to videos and I comment on other people's photos. So it's a bit of an opportunity for some free interior design. And on Pinterest, we've got loads of cool pictures on The Good Room. Hope to see you there.